Hey, do you need wallpaper? Go to wallpaperboulevard.com. Give them my name, tell them Spencer Colgan sent you, and they'll be sure to give you 10% off at checkout. Check it out, tell them I said hello. They have a tremendous selection. Don't shop anywhere else until you've checked out www.wallpaperboulevard.com. Welcome back to my channel. This is Spencer Colgan. I am in a shoebox of a tiny bathroom, nowadays called a powder bath, but it's a small bathroom. 4 feet of wall space there by 6 feet behind me. Not that big, and the walls don't even reach 8 feet. A nice little room to go over some tips about hanging wall covering. You should first seal your walls and let dry with a sealer that encapsulates the paint, whatever you have on the wall. I highly recommend Shields Clear, SHIELDZ. I believe you can get that outside of the continental USA as well. I've hung wallpaper on walls where the paint starts to crumble underneath the wall covering. Some wall coverings require an acrylic primer, and although I don't like the ridges acrylic can make when applied with a roller, it's very good because it makes the surface very hard and prevents such a thing that I just mentioned. But Shields Clear is very good. I make my own Shields Clear, and I've mentioned that on previous videos, and those of you who watch my videos often know what I'm talking about. But for the person who knows nothing about that, Shields Clear is an excellent primer. I have a friend of mine on YouTube. His YouTube name is Capo Wacko. The guy is loaded with tons of useful information. If he should happen to watch this, take note of his comments. They're very edifying. He's got a lot of knowledge. He's a good guy too. So, we're painting over flat paint that's been up for a while. And so that's your best bet, paint that's been on the wall for a while. Nothing newly applied. Anytime you get newly applied paint moist, it starts to crumble. So things vary, when you're hanging wallpaper. What are you wallpapering over? Drywall? Raw drywall? Roman 999. Or Shields Clear. Sometimes I use alcohol primer, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I use oil. But for the general room, where you're just saying, you know what, I want to change from paint, Shields Clear. Now, after your primer dries, you can also put a bed of paste on the wall. And so I took my clear heavy-duty paste and I put it on the wall. Two things accrue from such a prep, even though it takes time. Number one, it prevents gassing. Yes, air bubbles coming out and manifesting under your wall covering right about the time when you're going to leave. Secondly, it locks down the wallpaper. It locks it down. And so I like doing that to the walls. And so, although it's not absolutely necessary, you'll see people who hang wallpaper for the first time say, it went great, there were no bubbles, but the seams opened. Well, if you're in the UK, you say, absolutely gotta line the walls with liner. Well, in the USA, many of us line the walls, and many of us do not. It's not always necessary. Generally speaking, we line the walls when the manufacturer says lining paper must be used. Very few say that. Secondly, you can cover texture with lining paper. but it extends the job by a day. You come in, you apply your lining paper, and then the next day you come in and put a layer of paste over the lining paper and let it dry. Okay, so I want to show you something else that I do. One of the ways to keep your wall covering down in the most vulnerable areas, which are your corners, and your perimeter, is to use Spencer Colgan's Secret Potion. When I get the patent, I'm going to advertise it as Secret Potion. And it's just a fancy name of saying Spencer Colgan's Secret Potion. Secret Potion. Potion. VOV. Just joking about the Secret Potion. This is VOV. Okay? It's extra tacky glue. Let me tell you something. If your product is mostly vinyl, guess what? You're gonna need it in the corners. Because within a week, your corners are gonna come up. You're gonna get a call. Hi, something's going on in the corner. I think it's peeling. Well, that's because vinyl doesn't stick to vinyl. And so when you put vinyl wall covering in a corner, inevitably you wind up overlapping one of the edges onto the other. And so theoretically and realistically, you have vinyl wallpaper over vinyl wallpaper. And since vinyl is slick, non-porous, it's eventually going to come loose. But with this, it won't. So I go around all the edges, all the corners, with my Secret Potion. The first sheet of wallpaper is a strategic decision. It would be very risky and just logistically wrong, let's say, to start anywhere at whim. It would be completely wrong. Your first sheet is decided upon in consideration with and in conjunction with the last sheet. And so when you consider where to put the first sheet, you have in your mind where the last sheet will also fall. When you have that in mind, you go around the room with your tape measure opened up to the length of the width of the roll of wallpaper. And you make marks on the wall as to where the beginning of the roll will begin and the end of the roll will end, so that you can continue to make marks and simulate the installation, at least graphically speaking, so that you know where about each of your seams will land, so that you don't wind up with a seam right in the middle of your screen. You never want that to happen. That's a failure. That's a failure to plan. After you determine where will your first sheet hang, you determine the images on the wall covering should be placed in such a way as not to cut off the most prominent, if possible, the most prominent aspects of each panel. Now, this is a drop match. I don't think we're going to be able to save our furry friend from the ceiling, cutting it off. Okay, but ideally you would preserve him from getting cut off. After you do that, you put the sheet up and you determine, or you make sure that it is plumb. The product is York. You see that it's a drop match. Now, if you happen to hang this product or something similar, characterized by a very porous, matte, M-A-T-T-E, matte finish, in dark colors, you only have a short number of minutes to wipe the face down of any paste that you may get on the front. If you do not get it down within the first few minutes, you will have staining that is irreparable, cannot be fixed. It becomes ingrained in the pores. So I'm going to wipe this down now. Let me show you how porous this is. Watch. See the wetness disappear? If that's your wall covering, wipe it down. Do you see how the water gets pulled into the pores? Well, the same is going to happen with your paste. Okay. So we come to the first corner and we cut, I didn't do it yet, but we're going to cut this corner. You may wonder, why would you cut the corner? And I would say that even if it were plumb, this piece on this wall, even if it were straight, which it is, which is sort of a miracle, you should cut the corner. The reason why we cut it is twofold. Number one, in order that this piece be straightened out because of a crooked corner, but it's not crooked. So the prevailing purpose for which corners are cut is in order to relieve the corner of its inclination to lift. The thicker the wallpaper, the more you're gonna cut your corner. Watch it moving. If wall covering stayed like that, nice and sharp in that corner, there'd be no need to cut it. And you know what? Some guys don't cut it. Some guys don't cut it and they get away with it. But when Aunt Ethel comes over and she's busy minding the homeowner's business instead of her own, she's gonna say, "Who did the wallpaper? Because it's lifting out of the corner." Beware the customer who says, just so you know, I hang wallpaper. That's when you go, stop. Why aren't you hanging this? How you cut this wallpaper is very important. It's also a strategic decision. You're either going to put your guide here and cut onto this piece, or you're going to put it here and cut onto this piece. Now use your own thoughts and understand what I'm going to say. The edge you create is going to go underneath the adjacent piece. It will go under the adjacent piece in order to hide it from sight. So you saw the bathroom already. If I come into this bathroom, I don't want to see the edge of this sheet here. So I'm going to cut my wall covering like this, creating a 1/8 of an inch overlap from this wall onto this one, so that I can take this sheet and move it over to the corner, covering the edge of this one. Because if I don't, I'm going to see a white edge right there. After I trimmed it, I revealed a white line, right? And that is the separation between this and that. And that white line is very prominent when you're dealing with dark wallpaper. So again, I'm lifting this up. I've created a slight overlap, barely perceptible to your eye. But I'm now going to move it over onto the edge of this paper so that you don't see it. And now your seam will never come up. So we have 3 sheets, 1, 2, and 3. You'll notice that the main characters of the wall covering are right in the middle of the main wall. There are 2 main walls here. One right above the sink. And 2, this is a main wall. And so you would want to think about your main character, if you will, in the product, because it may not always be, it may be impacted by the introduction to the eyes, right? So let's say you had large, I don't know, let's say large balls here, right? You wouldn't want a big, let's say with this big, you wouldn't want to cut off here if you could help it. You would want a full one intact here, full one here, ideally, or at least a full one here, partial and partial. So when you're standing in front of the sink, you have the animal right in the center. And that's the way to do it. You'll notice that we have 2 here on this sheet, and we have 3 here. And that's because our pattern drops. So we have the animal here, and then it drops down to here, comes back. So you don't have boom, 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 boom of these animals. That's the idea behind the manufacturing process. When you're wrapping around an outside corner, you want to relieve the stress at the top so that your wallpaper doesn't tear just above that corner. So you want to just snip that paper right up to the point at which wall meets ceiling. And you do it here as well. Save you a lot of headaches. You'll often see pros rushing and they cut it a little too short in the corner. And what they do is they take a strip like this and just put it in the corner. I had a gentleman working for me once. So he was yapping away, blabbing about how good he was. And he cut the corner at least 1/4 of an inch short, right in front of me. And then right in front of me, he proceeded, and this is commercial vinyl. This is a for beginners video. I won't get into why you wouldn't take a piece of commercial vinyl and stick it in there underneath commercial vinyl. It's, you know, it's ridiculous, especially to do it right in front of the person who's paying you. So that's what he did, you know, because he knew everything, he thought. And so with my smoother, I'm going to put it there and drag my knife right across there. Do the same for here and here so that I can remove the wall covering. And if I haven't made the perfect separation, don't pull on it. Trim it again. Outside corners can be the cause for your wallpaper getting ruined, discolored. This happens to be a very high quality pigmented wall covering. It's durable. It can take this friction. But notice the angle at which I'm holding my smoother. This would offend the wallpaper like this. It's too hard. You want to bring it in just like you're massaging your own arm. Nice and easy. See that? Same thing here. Now, when the idea is we want to move any air that's trapped here by going up and down. And then we want to take this corner over to this corner and kill any air. Now, note that you don't do this. You're going to miss. What you're going to do is make impressions on the wall covering. So you want to put it on an angle so that there's no chance of you doing this. I start here, and with half moon strokes, push it in. And as you can see, I'm gathering paste. Okay, nice and easy. At the top, you can do that. Pull it down. The angle, remember, has to be really close to the number 0. Meaning like this. This is a 90. You don't want to do it like that. That's 45. And this is close to 0. Because it will slide on the wall covering rather than try to scratch it, you know? Not too bad. Okay. I pulled my wall covering down. I don't like the reveal at the top, so I'm just gently pushing it back up so that wall covering meets ceiling. That's it, folks. Okay. Not too bad, right? This room has one doorway. Stop right there. Stop going that way, because you're going to get into a situation where you're going to have 2 sheets of wallpaper meeting up where you began and where you ended. So stop right there, because it's better to have a mismatch that's only 15 inches than end your wallpaper here. Okay? Pretty commonsensical, right? Okay, so now we're gonna shift our attention behind me and start hanging this way. Go all the way around and come to over the door, and then you'll go home and have your favorite soft drink. Now, 2 things with this sheet. We're always remembering, if you guys are do-it-yourselfers, right? If you're a do-it-yourselfer, your success might lead you to forget about some important things. Number 1, go back to your previously installed sheets that are on the wall for an hour or 2. Make sure you do this. You take something with traction, a sponge, right? You find your seam, and you, look, watch this. See the seam there? Push it in from about here. Push it in. Make sure that seam is established. Because here's what happens. It moves over a hair, and then you got a hairline separation. And believe me, it's the last thing you want. So you want to examine your seams. Okay, look what I just discovered by examining my seam. Okay, you don't want that. Look, come on. This happens to pros too. Just get in there and put that seam back together. Okay, I call this nursing the seam. Because when you go home, your customer, oh, I love it, I love it, I love it. The next day, what do you get? You get a text. Is this normal? You know, and it's actually very upsetting. So you live and learn, okay? You live and learn. Now this one was just put up, so I'm still doing this sheet. You just see that? And here's what you do. You just keep monitoring it, okay? And then I take my smoother, make sure I always check before I touch the wall covering with it. You take it and you drag it real flat up against there, okay? So that you're trying to tell it, don't move, again, don't you dare move. What happens is the liquid in the paste begins to evaporate. And your wall covering moves because the liquid is moving. It's giving up air. So that's what I wanted to tell you. Another thing, I remember when I first started hanging paper. When I would come to a situation like this, right? Say, oh man, look what happened, I should have moved it over. No. You just take another sheet of wall covering, the left edge, you cut about 1 inch or 2 off of it, put it in there and just trim it. So you might think, oh no, but it doesn't always click in. You're just going to get another sheet of wall covering and just put in that much. Matching the pattern, of course. Okay, that's all I wanted to tell you at this point. As we continue to nurse our seams, watching for them hairlining, we come now into and out of a corner. And so you start at the top, obviously, and you bring it. What I like to do is bring it close, but not right on top of the sheet. I like to have a little space. Here's why. Although you can't see it, here's what's going on this edge. So when you put it away from this edge, you'll see that it's a hairline closer here and a hairline away here. What it allows you to do is when you get this all the way down, you simply slide it into place. If you start with it right on top of it, you'll be doing double the work, pushing it away, bringing it in. Start with it 1/8 of an inch away, and you'll be better off. Oh, that's a pain. Oh, man. Use the toilet as a ladder if you can. Matter of fact, we're just going to pull this out. I let my fingers do the walking. Keeping this down, I walk over to the corner and gently press with my fingers the wall covering into the corner so that I don't put a hole in it with my smoothing tool. Okay, let's get up top. We want to keep this loose. This is in place, and we have a big space behind our corner. And so we want to just gently, from the adjacent wall, push in. Fill that corner with wall covering, because then we can work on this. All right? When you come out of a corner, every sheet that makes it onto the next wall after a corner has to be plumbed. Because each corner is imperceptibly off, going in a little further, coming out a little further, it manifests itself in unevenness. And so if I were to continue this sheet according to the contour of the corner, this edge would be as crooked or as straight as the corner. To make sure that my corner has not made my forward edge crooked, I simply take my my level, which is almost 4 feet long, and just put it on the edge. There are guys with fancy calculations measuring from here to there. Put your level on the edge. Bring the wallpaper into the corner and then adjust this edge with your level. If you start drawing lines and measuring, you'll get it, but it'll take you a lot of time. You know you need wall covering in the corner, so bring the least amount of wall covering into the corner. Make contact with the corner. Remember, we overlapped this sheet under this one, because as I enter the bathroom, I'm looking at this sheet. In order not to see the edge of this sheet, I need to tuck the edge of this sheet under this one. So if you look in my corner, you'll see that I lose some of the pattern because my corner isn't perfectly straight. And so I put the least amount of wall covering into the corner, assuming that my corner is going to be straight. For the purposes of this video, assume your corner is straight. Put the least amount of wall covering into the corner, and then if it's crooked here, adjust it. Adjust it accordingly. And so if my wall covering looked something like this on the edge, let's say it looked like this. Touches at the bottom, but at the top, we got that space. Well, you adjust your wall covering. If my level were plumb, then we know we have to straighten out our wallpaper, right? And so I'm going to, in that case, I would simply bring my wallpaper into the corner, put it up against here again to make it straight so that there's no space there. You're either going to have to move the top in to make this edge plumb or the bottom in. And then you trim your corner. Other guys have a different method. I use that method as well. But I'm not getting out a plumb bob and putting it here. And by the way, I don't like snapping lines. My colleague Capo Wacko from California snaps lines on ceilings. First thing I thought, well, he was talking about 54-inch commercial. You snap a line with light-covered wall covering, it's going to bleed right through it. In this case, it wouldn't. But you can snap a line with commercial vinyl. But if you try to do that with a light leather wall covering or a white paper, beware, the color will come right through. Okay, I think I proved the point. Okay, and don't trim the top and the bottom of this piece until this is plumb. Now, folks, this video is for beginners. Plumb means that the level is straight. It means you have the bubble in the middle when you're holding it vertically. Level refers that the bubble is in the middle when you put it horizontally. Okay, as we continue to move forward, almost done, nurse the seams, make sure they haven't come apart. I push my wall covering into my corners with the soft flesh of my fingers because smoothers can tear through wall cover. You're not going to tear through this stuff. It's too good. It's too good. Maybe if it were wet for an hour. But York, you're not tearing through that. It's too well made. Schumacher, you're not cutting through that with your finger. Okay. So that's, now you saw I dropped it behind the toilet bowl. But let's say the toilet were a tight space. Well, then you get yourself a soft stick and you shimmy it right behind the toilet bowl. Pushing the wallpaper right into place. That's what you do. Okay, so when my sheet is in a corner, I deal with the corner first. I'm dealing with this corner because I need the wallpaper to stay in the corner. And then I can push it over to the seam. But my primary concern is, does the corner have enough wallpaper in it? Because if I fix my seam here, and my corner doesn't have wall covering in it, I just wasted time. So I'm holding my seam in place, holding it, then I'm going over to the corner, bringing air toward the seam, which has a gap in it. And I kill two birds with one stone by getting the air out and spreading the wall covering over to my seam. Okay? Not easy, folks. This one is really not easy. I'm sweating bullets
It's about 79 degrees in here, and the humidity is stifling. And I love when your customers come home. Are you hot? Yeah. You think it's a joke, like you think they're joking. You hot? Like, you know, yeah. Oh, I was gonna put on the heat. I'm chilly. You're gonna put on the heat. January in Florida. It's gonna put the heat on. Well, do me a favor, don't put it on, because I'm gonna pass out. Ugh. Okay, now you're spreading, you're cleaning it, you're pushing it, you're muscling the wallpaper into the seam, okay? You don't want that seam coming apart. Keep cleaning it, pushing it together until you're certain it's not going to move. Okay? And we're making a nice crease in the seam. Let me show you. Okay. So this is my seam right over the toilet. All right. So I keep pushing it toward the center. I don't want this happening. We don't want that. Okay. Now, let me show you something. Okay, watch this. You see where it meets up here beautifully? That's our seam right there. Look up here. Look up here, okay? Okay, you see that? Right below it, meets up perfectly. Now watch this. You see where it doesn't meet up right there? You got a little play in this paper to, I don't want to say the word stretch, but guess what? You do. You can stretch it just a bit. But don't pull too hard, folks. You'll tear it. You'll tear it. You'll get overambitious and you'll tear it. You'll remember at the beginning of the video, I talked about the end where the beginning meets the end. The reason why you want it somewhere short is that because the first sheet and the last sheet are not going to meet up when you join them, you want the connections from one sheet to the next to be minimum. And so this is ideal. Very rarely do I get a vent over a doorway, so I'm taking advantage of it here. But I suggest to those watching this video that you end your wall covering over a doorway, provided that it's not more than 2 feet. If it's 3 to 4, if you're in a 12-foot room, don't do this. Well, I've done it, but I did it with a wall covering that was easy to hide the mismatch. But the longer the piece, the greater you're going to draw attention. Here, it's only about 14 inches. So I'm going to connect the wall covering here, go over this, and blend these flowery leaves in together from this sheet here onto this one. Let's try it. You have to be a little artistic. My friends in the UK do not do it like this. They would end it here. They would pick a corner, least conspicuous in the room, and end it here. But I've heard this before. I don't know why you would mismatch 8 feet of wallpaper in the corner. I really don't understand that. When you can be a little artistic, cutting around leaves, and hide it here. You're only talking about a mismatch above this vent and below it, rather than mess with ending it into a corner. Okay, let's get this thing up here. Okay, so it matches there. And so, okay,
of course, we're gonna have to cut this tail out, right? Okay, let me trim top and bottom and I'll get right back to you. Okay. Now, what do we do with this? Gotta get rid of this. How far can we cut over? Okay. But we definitely have to get rid of this stupid tail. Right? You agree? Alright, let me cut down here. This is what I'm gonna do. Cut down here. Go around this tail. Okay, let me do that. So I cut this, went around the tail, and killed it right into here. Let's see what I got so far. Let me trim this up. Okay, let's clean that up. So what do you think? It's for beginners. The techniques employed in the video are only a few, but just to get the beginner wallpaper hanger or wallpaper enthusiast, just to give him or her a little spunk to get them going. How about that?